Morning. I'd like to begin by welcoming some guests who are here with us today. Do you have any guests around? Those are not guests. Those are not guests. Hey, hello family, we're all here. Good. By the way, this section is not reserved. There's this big void of emptiness and this. Thank you, Steve Kelly, for taking the initiative. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I think most of you already know that, or many of you already know that my favorite letter of St. Paul is the letter of Paul to Timothy, which is what we've been reading for a while. We've been reading it on the daily masses and then also reading it here today, this weekend again. And this is a part of the letter of Paul to Timothy. It's already on the second letter of Paul to Timothy. And this is already actually coming to the end of the second letter of Paul to Timothy. In chapter 4, 6 to 8, 16 to 18. And here we can see a very different Paul as he pours out his heart to his beloved disciple, student, friend, and someone who he treated like a son. So he's passing here some very beautiful words that will serve as a legacy to encourage Timothy in his own ministry and his own missionary journeys. And of course, here we see a Paul at the end of his own journey, and he leaves Timothy with these beautiful words. The time of my departure is at hand. I have competed well. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. It's so beautiful to think about those words, especially in the season when you see everywhere around you the leaves are starting to fall, and you see some kind of a dramatic change in all around us as we see some type of a termination as these leaves begin to fall on the ground and the trees start to become bare. And in the season, it's good to think about these kinds of things. The things that we stand for, what our journey is like, and what we live our life for. In here, we see Paul making a statement about what his journey has been. And so he says, I have kept the faith. If there's something that will define and explain and describe what my journey has been, it is that I have kept the faith through thick and thin. I remember when I was a professor of philosophy in Jesuit University in Manila, in the Philippines, I did one activity with my students, and this was called the writing of your epitaph. Of course, these are, I was in my 20s, and these were also young people in their late teens and early 20s, and I made them write their epitaph in the time of their life when they are young and full of hope. And I said to them, what would you like to put in your epitaph? And in their musing and thinking about it, there is this one epitaph that stood up. A lot of them answered the same thing, like the same epitaph. And the epitaph that kind of stood up for many is this: here lies someone who believed and have loved. Okay, there was another guy who says, here lies someone who had it all and really enjoyed it. Something like that. That's not bad. It's not a bad epitaph. But a lot of people really chose, to be able to see their life backwards and be able to name two things: belief and love. I think it's a good thing to kind of think a little bit about our own epitaphs. In my own, once in a while, my own musing, my own, lazy day moments, I sometimes think a little bit about that. What is defining my life? That at the end of it, I would be able to say, this is who I have been. These were the things that I've stood for as a human being that walked this earthly journey. You know, in using this, there's always this one song that kind of appears in my head. It's called "Find Us Faithful." So it's kind of appropriate for Paul. It goes, "We're pilgrims on a journey on a narrow road, and all who've come before us find their way, cheering on the faithful, encouraging the weary. Their lives a stirring testament of God's sustaining grace. And may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave them to..." I always get emotional about it. "And the footprints that we lead them to believe. And the lives we lead inspire them to obey. And may all who come behind us find us faithful." I'd like us to see this idea of what Paul is doing in his letter to Timothy in the light of the gospel reading today, which I think is very controversial in many ways and actually very insightful. We find Jesus pointing out two different kinds of people in the temple area who are both praying. The image of the Pharisee. For those who don't know, the Pharisees in the time of Jesus, and of course who the Pharisees are, is that they are those that were really put in charge of keeping the law followed. Because you see, in the history of Israel, they have gone through so many terrible things. They have been taken away from their own land through the captivities that they had to go through. And they've always realized that those captivities and those painful moments of their history that they had to go through were caused by their unfaithfulness to the law of God. And so, to avoid this wrath that they experienced, the consequence of their unfaithfulness to the law of God, they commissioned or specified certain people to really guard all of the Jewish community, all of the Jewish family, to be able to follow the letter, the law of the letter to the law to the letter, right? And so these are the Pharisees. They're doing their job by making sure that the law is followed to the dot, to the letter. And that is why it is quite typical of a Pharisee to know himself as the follower of the law and the doer of what is just and good and right. And so listen to the prayer of the Pharisee. "Oh God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity. Greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay my tithes on my whole income." Catholics, let me tell you that these were the genuine Pharisees of his time. But today, in my 10 years as a priest, or close to 10 years, I have met a lot of people, a lot of Catholics, that have kind of the same or similar disposition. These are Catholics that have also done their very best to follow everything that the church says and that the church teaches, which is a good thing. Obedience is one of the most important virtues of a Christian. And so they go to church every Sunday, they do their fasting on Ash Wednesday, and even more than that, some of them are actually fasting every Friday, whether the church tells them to or not. And then they are there every holiday of obligation. They do all the things that they believe is what is important for being Catholic, and they follow it strictly to the dot. But this leads them to a certain type of attitude. I have a feeling that the people who are this kind of Catholics have the biggest temptation to coin into themselves and judge themselves as the righteous people. I follow everything. I am the righteous person here in the room. And because of that, they also put themselves in charge of judging every other person who fails in comparison to their standard of righteousness and goodness as a Catholic, and faithfulness as a Catholic, as a Christian. And so they're the ones that go around the room and say, that one's not kneeling at consecration. This one is the one who wears the spaghetti strap at Mass. That is the one who talks during Mass. That's the one that is living a very scandalous life out there when it comes to church. This is the person who always talks bad things. This is the person who is... they have positioned themselves to be the ones to make a judgment about every single person around them. Bitter, self-righteous, and judgmental. Those are the most common temptations of a well-meaning, church-going Catholic. And sometimes what we get in our heads is like, because we're doing this, and everybody else is partying outside, we feel bitter. That we're the ones that are doing this, while all the others seem to have more fun than us. I gotta tell you, I think it's fun to be Catholic. It's fun, I think, to go to church. But sometimes we get into this rut and look at them like, oh, they're all having fun there. Why can I not do that? Why can I just not abandon all of this and not worry and just live in my own type of freedom and completely forget about all of this? And sometimes that makes people bitter and angry and mad that all the others are not doing exactly the same thing that they're doing. And that is why when those people start to find the way close to the church and start to walk through the door, the very first people that are on the doorstep, that are on the door, are the ones that are going to give them judgment. But here's a sinner walking into the door, through the door. Christians, Catholics, please. Who appointed you to be the judge? Who appointed you? I mean, I've said this to a couple of people who tell me these things. Father, I think you should be the first one to tell these people that they're sinning for them. And I say, who are you? Who do you think you are? Who are you? We can learn from David Hume. David Hume, the philosopher, said, when we make a judgment about someone, please consider the possibility that the moment you judge that person, change has already taken place. And the person that you're judging is no longer the same. And in my own head, I'm thinking, how can we make a judgment about someone when we don't even know that person that walks on the door? We don't know the journey that that person has taken. We don't know why that person is coming to church now. We don't know why that person was away. We don't know what kind of burdens that person was carrying. We don't know the kind of stuff that that person had to go through, and so that person was away. And then we are by the door judging this person. How can they walk in and find grace when we are there blocking their way into the place of grace, Jesus Christ? We have put ourselves like God. Okay, I'll stop there because I'm getting worked up here. But you know what I mean? Catholics, this is not the place for that. Not this church. Not here. Please. Okay, let's talk about the publican. Because the publican is what Jesus elevated and said, this is how you want to get your own your redemption. You want to be redeemed. You want to be justified. Be like this. Lord, have mercy on me a sinner. That's the disposition of a Christian. Not the accusing, condemning, judging Christian, but the Christian who goes to himself and says, I am unworthy. Just a few weeks ago, we had this beautiful line. The servant said, we have done all that we were just told to do. We were just doing our job, but we are useless, and we are useless servants. We were just doing what we were told. That is the disposition of the Christian. And here, we see that Jesus again elevates it and says, that is the one that receives his sanctification and redemption and justification. The one who exalts himself will be humbled. The one who humbles himself will be exalted. And so Catholics, Christians, it's time to kind of think about the kind of life that we have to lead. Because someday, we will look back at our lives from the point of view of like where Paul is, And I hope that what we will see there is that not that we have judged and condemned and became self-righteous, but that just like the Lord, we were compassionate and humble before every person that we meet and before our own God. May these inspire us and lead us to live our faith well and do the race to the finish line with these godly and Christian virtues. Amen.